Good afternoon, Mystic Ministry, Temple Time, Empower, Mentoring, and possibly Circling Grace. Let me let some of you in. Okay. Welcome. I'm in the tree house again today. Takes a bit of setting up because it's windy and everything's teetering on itself. But it's either that or I'm in a hot, hot house. And if I have to sit in that heat, I probably wouldn't show up. Just saying. I'm just saying. It's too damn hot. All right. So, let me just get this one going. There we go. We're live. Alrighty. So, what are we talking about today? I did get some emails and messages. Yes, I did. And I read them. Haven't responded, but now you know. So thank you for that. That's awesome. Awesome. What are we going to talk about today? I did say on last Thursday that we would continue something or other, but you know how I roll, don't you, by now? I never know what I talk about, basically. That's the fib. I do. We talked about the mother. We talked about holy wisdom. We talked about connecting with that aspect. And some people did that in their own time and shared with me how that was for them. Some people said it brought up some fear. I always say yes. Great. Actually, that might be a good place to start. All right. So there you go. The breath. The breath. Did you hear my breath? The breath of, okay, where are we going? What are we doing? I have got some pieces of scripture that I had last time too, but I didn't read, I didn't go into, but interestingly enough, it talks about the breath, a holy breath. So because I took that holy breath, I'm going to look at it. So this is more or less around Jesus's baptism, which is where I first learned about holy wisdom residing. She resides in me. She resides with me, within me. And we said last Thursday that the Shekinah or the Shekhinah, or there's different names, but I called her Shekinah or Shekhinah last week, so I'll stick with that for now, not to confuse you. Now, that word isn't in the Bible. It's not mentioned. She's not mentioned in this way, but she is mentioned in, I'm just going to, for want of a better word, code. The same as in the Zohar, which is another mystical text, where these aspects of the feminine some of you know about the Sephirot, the 10 emanations, and they're the emanations of the emanator, right? And they're not mentioned in the way of, Chokmah, Bina, Tiferet, and so forth. They're mentioned in the eye opening. They're mentioned in Divine Mother, Bina. Right? So you won't know. You won't know. Does that baffle you? Like so much hidden coded information. And I'm not going to go into today what my thoughts and theories are around that. What I want to really make clear is that there is this other aspect to what we might call that emanator or God. I wish I had that. So I'm going off my memory now, but I wish I had that. I'll get the text for you. But it is basically the first. Good. So people are fascinated. Good. I was actually going to cancel today and come back in the morning because there was some things coming in, and I was sort of listening to whether I, put that aside and come back in the morning, and then I can share that with you, or show up. And I chose to show up because here I am. So there are. So basically, if we look at the translation of the first few words of the Bible, or in Genesis, right? And so I'll get this for you. But when we translate it in biblical Hebrew, it says something completely different. It says something like this. So I'm paraphrasing, but I can get it for you. Okay. It's stuff that I was looking at earlier. I didn't even go to my Hebrew class, right? Because I was doing all this, right? It was just coming in. I was like, oh, okay. It was around. Just let me see in my notes. I did write it, so I've got my little book here, and I'm just seeing if I actually wrote it down, and I did. In the beginning, created God. In the beginning, God was created. Right? Is the direct translation. In the beginning, God was created, or in the beginning, created God. So what you're understanding around these scriptures and or even beyond that, like God, the emanator, and then what we remember last week I asked you, what do you believe and how do you know that information from? Like, where does it come from? So in the beginning, if what was the wording? In the beginning, God was created. And what created God? Right? So I can read from my scratchy little notes from earlier. It won't make too much sense. Well, maybe it will. Maybe it'll be awesome, and you'll be like, yeah. Right. So in Hebrew, Ein Sof is this infinite, or is the infinite. Okay. And why it gets confusing is because in all these different ancient texts, you can read them, like even the Vedas and so other Eastern ancient texts and scriptures and whatnot. The mystical aspects are all very similar, right? It's difficult to get the mystic understanding from the general text. It's just not. So if you read the Torah, for instance, you wouldn't get necessarily what I'm talking about, because it's a different perspective, right? If you read the Christian texts, you wouldn't either. But if you read the Christian mystics, you may. I'm mystically inclined, right? The mystics, most of you that are watching may, I'm going to assume possibly are too. The mystics will push the boundaries of what's, they're the rebels, right? For the ones that are pushing the information to look for what else, how come, what? So, so the infinite generated an aspect of God, Elohim, right? Some of you have heard that, probably heard that, Elohim. That's just another aspect. So there are all these different aspects. You'll hear me say all these aspects of the self. We're created in the image. All these emanations, all these aspects, right? So I'm just looking at why I'm telling you all this. It's almost to say, this is why I say there's truth in everything, but that's a mystical perspective too. Because the mystics will look at paradox. They'll look at what, when there's one thing, there is the other. And so why that's dangerous. Some people, call what I'm sharing dangerous, right? Why it's dangerous is because it gets into love and fear, or good and evil and things like this. There's different ways to look at it. So if you ask what is God, that's a huge question, right? I asked you that last Thursday. Well, not quite that. I asked, what do you believe? So this is another little slight twist on it. What is God, or what is your belief around that? Whatever that is for you, right? What you believe and where that's from. So that's sort of what we were touching on last time. I have to move my legs. They're going to sleep sitting cross-legged in this treehouse thing. Not 20 anymore. All right. So good and evil. And some of you that follow and come on here and listen to the replays and whatnot, a lot of this is just the norm for you now, right? But some people, it starts to break down or challenge their belief systems, and therefore it becomes what they see as dangerous or fearful, or pushing against everything they believe. And so when a human being has this breakdown of what they believe, it is dangerous. It is. Right? Because, so bear with me because I'm going to go two streams here, but because, working in, stress, trauma, counseling, therapy, all of this, you don't take away somebody's belief and you don't crush it. If there's something that needs to shift, you assist them to rebuild before you ever, do you see what I'm saying? You never take away a belief system, because what's left, right, is dangerous psychologically. It's like how I used to teach parenting, all ages, but with the infants. And I think in America you call them pacifiers. We call them dummies in Australia, right? They're the things the babies suck on. But kids can be, have a pacifier until, they start going to school and they still have one. No judgment on that, right? Personally, that there is a reason for the behavior. So if it's a soother, a pacifier, what's going on for the child, what needs are not being met or developmentally or whatever. There's a million different ones. And just by the by, if you stick your thumb to the roof of your mouth, it's really soothing. So that actually was one way that some techniques that I used with children. I mean, even adults, but children. I generally didn't give candy and whatnot, but there's something called a chubba chub. It's like a lollipop and it's round, like it's a ball, and it fits just in that part of the mouth. And so just sucking on something that fits in that part of the mouth soothes, calms. So what can we swap out? Something that's socially or so-called seen to be socially inappropriate with something that's more appropriate, right, for the adults that are around that particular child. So you always got to look at the whole picture. But ultimately, if that child is needing to be soothed because they can't regulate their nervous system, that needs to be looked at, not just take the pacifier away. Do you get me? So that's just a really simple, I guess, story. But it goes to beliefs as well, these sorts of beliefs. Like if you've been told your whole life that, maybe you've been told your whole life that there isn't anything bigger than yourself, right? Just say, right? You might have been told that, or the total opposite. And then as you develop and have your own experiences, you don't quite understand what's happening to you because it's outside of what you were conditioned to believe. And that can start to rock you a little as well. Does that make sense? Some of you been through that. I think all of us have to some degree, because as we, our parents and our how we grow up, where we grow up, are only a small aspect of the world, of the globe. And when you step out of that, you might think you know it all, but you step out of your little, what they call it, your little goldfish bowl, and you really see. It's like those children that are, getting to the end of primary school and they're like, the oldest and the biggest and, I'm all it. And then they've got to go to high school. And then they end up being the smallest and it's that sort of thing. So anyway, back to my point of good and evil. Well, mystics tend to see the paradox, right? And so the two sides of that God. That's controversial. Right? That's controversial. But I'm just going to say, there's millions, probably billions of people who would back that statement up. Oops. I'm just going to fall over. But this isn't to tell you what to believe. And I say this regularly. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm here to disrupt. Not break, disrupt. Just say, did you know, what if there was something else? What if you just thought there was only chocolate and vanilla and strawberry ice cream? Neapolitan, we used to call it. Do you remember? It came in a big tub. I don't know if it all over a little bit. It's a big tub and it's like, oh, it's horrible. But anyway, that's all we had, right? It was really cheap and, you have chocolate, white and pink. Now, all the stuff that's around. I was telling somebody this the other day about the choice, because we talked about choice last week, I believe, or the lack of, free will choice. And, you know, when you go into the supermarkets or, yeah, let's just use the supermarket. Some of the stores are huge and they've just got aisles of the same item. It might be shampoo and conditioner. And there might be 50 different shampoos and conditioners. And you think you have a lot of choice. Psychologically, what happens is you freeze because there's too much choice. You don't know what to choose. So a little trick that I do, I scan everything. So I energy test everything. So if I ever, it's rarely I go to the supermarket because, you know, it's just not my thing. I worked my world to not, I do go to Costco though. It's like doing a whole month in one go because it's not what I want to do. Had to do it all my life, you know, raising kids. I choose not to do it. Actually, what's his name? John DeMartini. He told me this. Do you remember him? Do you know him? Do you remember him? He's a beautiful man. I interviewed him a couple of years ago. Actually, a couple of times he was on Spirit Whispers. Anyway, he talks about, he set his life up this way too, that it's something similar that I taught as well, but he really instilled it because he's been doing it a lot longer. You look at what you're here to do, and basically you're categorizing, or you're looking at where your value goes, right? So where your energy goes. And I used to do this through my bank account, right? I could look at anybody's bank account and see what they value. So you could do that for yourself. You literally, where does your money go? Because that's your energy. I literally just sent my taxes off, and nearly all of my income goes on training and coaching and mentoring. Like that's just what I value, right? And I know that as I grow, you know, I have to, you know, if my teachers don't grow with me, then I'm looking for someone else. But most of them have been around for a while. So value. And then you go, all right, well, if all of my energy is going towards these three things, so you do your top three things, if all my energy is going to those three things and they're not what I value, then something needs to shift. So for instance, when I started really tracking this, I was wanting to be strong, right? Because, you know, as you get older, as a female, well, any gender, but particularly, and because of, you know, my grandmother, you know, it's a fear that I don't want to not be able to walk. And then because I can't walk and I haven't used my arms enough, I can't even wheel myself because my muscles in my hands and right. So that brought that up. So one of my real values was my body, my physical strength. So I had this workout and that was valuable to me. So it meant that it was one of my three on the list. Do you see what I mean? And if something else came in to knock it off, I had to look at why. Why was that more valuable than my physical health? Which leads to, you know, mental health as well, because, you know, all of that. So anyway, that's just a little side coaching for you, right? But John DeMartini talks of this, and he doesn't drive. He hasn't driven for like, I don't know, a long time. I was going to say 20 years, but maybe it's not quite that long. Maybe it's 10 years. He doesn't drive, right? He doesn't do any of the things that take his time away from what he's here to do, which is educate, travel around and educate, and something else. I forget now. Oh, right, I think. Now, you might say, well, you know, he's probably wealthy and can afford to do all of that. Don't misunderstand, because if you focus on what's valuable, your life shifts to what's valuable, right? Do you know what I mean? If you're putting your energy where it's there's no value, and you might say, oh, I've got to pick up the kids from school and I've got to do this, that, and the other. Actually, we were talking to somebody the other day about this. Right? Yes, you've got parents, but there are things that you say yes to that maybe should be a no. And why do you say yes to them? Do you remember this conversation? Anyway, we were talking about this the other day. But basically, tracking your yeses and your nos, because some of you, not all of you, but there are some of you that are a lot of earth element, and the earth element is like that mother, bringing it back to the mother, is that really compassionate, but goes into over compassionate. So you're just saying yes to everybody and everything, and then there's nothing left of yourself. So you're pretty much, gone from humility to doormat to fragments of a doormat, because every man and their dogs walked all over you, right? There's nothing left. So, all right, I went off on a tangent and that was interesting. But yeah, I used to look at that, and tax time is, because I literally had to I've spent the last 2 days doing my tax, and then I sent it off, for the accountant to do the rest of it. But pretty much I do my own taxes. Reason why? I want to see where stuff's going. I want to see what I've valued, right? I want to see, like, where do I need to shift and change? What does it cost to run my business? And funnily enough, for the last handful of years, it's cost the same to run, right? What I earn changes, but what it costs to run the business seems to stay pretty solid. So why am I telling you this? Well, maybe it's tax time for you too, or maybe it's about looking at your Visa statement or your PayPal statements or whatever, your bank statements, and just for even a month, and go, what did I value that month? As an indicator. I mean, a more in-depth way of doing it is writing the 3 things that matter the most to you, and then tracking it through the week. Are you how many hours you putting towards that, or are other things coming in? And John taught me a more like how watching him. It's not like he modeled it. He modeled it because it was something I was already teaching, but he modeled it in how he really made it so boom, boom, boom. This is what I value. This is what I'll invest in, right? And if you look at what I invest in, it's my knowledge, my education, and my guidance, It's interesting I'm sure my accountant has a chuckle when she sees my stuff, because there's literally nothing else on there, other than around Christmas and a few birthday things in there, but literally. But that's what I choose. So there's no judgment on other people who have, fancy things, or, I mean, what's fancy anyway? I'm looking at my red pot plant over there. And she looks pretty fancy to me. She was $3. Eric bought her the other day. New flower to go in our weed garden, Rebel. So we've got all weeds except for 2 pot plants. One's purple and one's deep red. Anyway, I could see them from here. It reminded me of the weed garden. But all the weeds are beautiful and yellow now. The weeds are yellow flowers like daisies. All right, so let's go back to my point. So 2 sides of God. And this statement, in the beginning, God was created. Wow. Right? Genesis. So I'm just trying to check the Zoom, because we just got Jennifer come on. I haven't been watching the chat, but So I'm just having a look. There's no one on there. All right. So the Ein Sof, the infinite. As a mystic, I've talked about the no thingness. I would say there's no thing, right? Not nothing, there's no thing. And Ein, E-I-N, Ein, how it's spelt is really interesting. I think I'll go into that's nerding out a bit much for some of you. Yeah, I'll leave that. but the letters, the Hebrew letters that it's spelt with, and the meaning of those, it just takes you in and in and in and in, right? So Ein, nothing, nothingness. Ein Sof, no thingness, right? So this no thingness, this infiniteness, the infinite God generated an aspect of God, Elohim. So the Ein Sof, the infinite God generated an aspect of God, Elohim. And this might be a little esoteric for some of you, but the ones I'm looking on Zoom, you've done some work. You've been around for a while, so it will make sense in, let me give you a reference. What I probably need to do, if you're interested, is get you all the different names of God that are related to what I'm speaking about. So then you might have a bit more of a track, because I believe some of you would have heard some of these names, right? Yeah, rather than just, I'll prepare. How's that? I'll prepare and give you some info on it if you're interested. So I've already talked about the Sephirah, the emanations, but those emanations come out of the pool of the no thingness. So some of you, we've talked about the 10 emanations, and, you know, even cross-referencing them with other aspects or other ways of knowing within the energetics of the human and those sorts of things. Well, they all come out of that. So I've always spoke about what's behind creation, right? Do you remember? I'll say, like, we have the light, the emanation, the emanator, the emanation. Behind that, it's like saying, if you saw the page with all the writing on it, the white of the page, and then the writing is the created, right? As an example, or years ago, I used to teach it with the flashlight, you know. So the flashlight, there's a light, but the light is the emanation, but there's something behind the globe, right, where it's coming from. And it's this great expansion of no thingness. And it's not about trying to describe. It's indescribable, yet we will try. Right? So anyway, these are just my personal notes, but while we're here, there's a little bit about the mysticism. I already said that. The all is one, and being a part of the totality. And it's about being the point. So remember I was teaching about the one, about learning to be the point, all of it, and coming back to the point, right? The point. So the incarnation is the point. So there's no thingness into the point, into all there is, and back around into the point. Well, the point holds it all. It's like the seed is a fairly common way of explaining like blueprint stuff, right? So this tree, for instance, the seed of this tree had the whole tree blueprint within it. Right? The same with us, the same with, so the holographic type of understanding, I guess you could say. I'm just looking at my points. So I guess I'll just go through them. There's a couple more. I wasn't going to talk about this, but it's just what I was jotting down to expand on later. So that Ein Sof as infinite is indefinable essence. Indefinable essence. And the Sephirah, or the emanations, are the ways in which we can be intimate through them or have a relationship. There's some type of relating. And I guess the last point, and then I'll, because this might throw a few of you, I'm not sure. And this God is incomplete without us. In the way that through our actions, right? Through our actions, through our hands, it's like we are the hands of the beloved. We're the hands of God. It's like no, I use that, won't go there. And so it's through us that there's reparation, right? Depending on what your belief system is and how you perceive the world and what, needs to happen for humanity, for the blah, 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 right? But there is this understanding that it is through us, with us, our actions, that this dance happens, or this intimacy happens. So this brings us back to the Shekinah, right? Which is the feminine aspect, some might say. And those of you that have done the aspects of the Rise to Rose, looking at the Malkut, or the lowest, the bottom emanation, right? The one that's dropped the furthest. Anatomically, there's different understandings of that. It could be, some say it's the vagina, some say it's the lips, right? But that might just be a nice way of saying vagina. Some say, it's all these different aspects of the feminine matriarchs. Ultimately, it's the Shekinah, it's the feminine aspect of this emanation, right? And it's her job, or her role, or her way to reunite with the beloved. So it's this, I don't know how are you following? Am I losing any of you? Because without the diagrams and having the background, it could be a little cryptic. just know there's different worlds, different levels, different realms, right? Or different worlds. And the lower world, the physical world, is where what I'm talking about now. And it's this physical world through the virtues. And each virtue is one of the 10 emanations that are within us, that when we activate, when we are working, being guided by, bringing into the world in a physical way through our actions, our thoughts, our speech, our actions, is how we're intimate with the beloved, the whatever. I mean, there's so many different names, different aspects, right? So you choose that. I'm not going to be the one to tell you what to, you know what I mean? So that's why I say the beloved, because it's my way of having almost like my courting, right? The Shekinah, feminine aspect, right? The shadow, the aspect of God that is within everything that is on the earth is the Shekinah, is that emanation, is the feminine, is the, yeah, I think that's enough. And so where I started was saying, and I said this last week too, around it doesn't matter how you think of Jesus. I mean, I used to think he was the greatest social worker on the planet, right? Like he walked helping people and all the rest of it, right? The holy wisdom rests within prophets. He was a great prophet. He was a yeah. I mean, so you could talk all sorts of ways. I'm not going to again tell you what to believe, or so just taking little pieces and going, okay, well, what do I already know, and how does that fit or overlay? Because I started by saying the mystic truths are within every tradition. They're within every tradition. You'll find them. They all go back to what? That we're all connected. We're all sort of, looking for this, where we're in unity, and now the reparation of that. And the way to do that is through our actions with the Shekinah, or the Shalima, they call her as well. Lots of different names. But I think I talk to her, I dance with her, I am intimate with her as holy wisdom. That's what I call her. But I just wanted to give you, my job is to give you many different ways of knowing, so that you can start to see that, okay, well, you didn't get it that way. Well, maybe you can understand that piece that maybe you were told when you were 10 by looking at it from this perspective. Oh, okay. Yeah, I get that. That feels resonant, because a lot of the time we are taught by teachers who are tired, right? And they're just doing it for the money. There's no passion. There's no emanation coming through them, right? It's just theory. And that's not inspirational. Do you get with me? So we just go, yeah. When you experience it directly, I have to move again. When you experience it directly, or even a touch, as some of you have been, You may not understand it. You may not know what exactly is happening, but you're feeling, you're experiencing something that's different from what you felt before. When you do that connection, holy wisdom rests in me. Holy wisdom, come, you know, Shekinah, great mother, divine father. The divine mother is the way to the divine father. She's the aspect of God. It's like saying God is good and evil. It's both. There's a paradox. The same as, you know, masculine, feminine, but not as we know it, because it really isn't a masculine and feminine. It's an aspect. It's an aspect that's come in and is within. That's why the creator or creation is a very feminine energy, right? Giving birth. Do you know what I mean? It's like the beyond the creation is like, I used to see it like a canvas, you know, that's, and then we're creating onto the canvas. So it's like this nothingness, and then there's the creation, and it's all an aspect of the beloved. We just got different names. So I've often called it primordial light. Like it's there's light that can't be on this earth. And I think it was the Rebel, he said, you know, when you were younger, you were told that it was dangerous to, or these might not be your exact words, but paraphrasing what I can remember, that we weren't to have direct access, right? And in this way, it's true because we can't, because that primordial light will burn you up. And in fact, when you see pictures of the 10 emanations, well, I was going to say the good ones, but they're looking from the back. And it said that we're looking at the back of the beloved or God. Why? Because when you look directly, and so, you know, it's like Moses, all the prophets who had some sort of access, you weren't able to see directly. Do you see what I mean? To that part, that aspect, that's where you go when you're physically dead, you know. There's different worlds, there's different contact points, and how we develop and build our energetics and how we live our life, our virtues, if you want to call them that, or how, you know, we understand those emanations, which are all guidance that's here. And whether you look, and so that's sort of what we're touching on in the side program is, we haven't done it a great deal yet, but, you know, looking at different reference points that are saying the same thing or very similar. They don't often directly cross, right? And that's because if you look at those 10 emanations, you know, there's one that might have been female and then turns to male, or vice versa. Do you know what I mean? There's movement, right? And I say that with the chakras as well. I was saying this the other day. You know, most of you will know the 7 main, but there's hundreds. There's 72,000 nadis, and they're energetic paths within the physical body, right? But when you are activating at higher levels, you get overlays of higher energy systems that can almost sort of, I call it like transduce down this amount of charge or energy or light, right? Emanation, so that you can hold more, you can experience more, you can dance with the beloved a little more. right? But that direct, how I think a lot of humans perceive it isn't possible, because you would burn up. We're just not evolved enough to do that. So that's why a lot of the stories, maybe I'll tell you that next time, are around how when that emanation was here more fully, it had to retreat, it had to pull back, because it was destroying, there was destruction. It had to be like basically close down. And through that closing down, that's how those emanations came out of the void, out of the no thingness. There was that creation. And why I'm talking about this is because those, I see the energetics, I see the gate, what I call the gateways, which are the emanations, and how I see them moving just in my field. I now understand as how these emanations shift and move. They're not stagnant. We're not looking at them from the side. I see it from down the center and the moving, rotating of the emanations. And so that's how this information came and continues to come and inform me in different ways, and probably take the rest of my life, and maybe more, to get my little human head around it all. But we don't necessarily need to, right? We don't need to. So I guess the point of today, which was last week as well, is to know that, and this was what I was trying to tell you last week, was around holy wisdom. Holy wisdom being that feminine aspect of the divine, the beloved, the divine mother aspect, which is within everything. And when you, I was going to say, when you're dedicated to, it's almost like an honoring, a devotion, right? Because these texts say she comes to prophets, right? She comes to prophets. But what does that mean? For me, a lot of what I do and see and know and whatnot, I've taught that to hundreds of students. So are they all prophets? Right? How I would see it, oh, there's a spider, there's the mother spider on my, I wonder if it'll walk over the camera. Anyway, so don't think of that or see that or hear that and go, oh, that means that I can't have this access. Because student after student after student has felt that merge with the beloved, aka the feminine aspect that is able to be touched, right? So in case you're having a bad day and you go, because I know you all, I know, you're going to go, oh, that's not for me, I'm not a prophet. Well, maybe you are, right? Maybe you are. And even if you don't identify as it, the world is at a point where they don't say prophets, but they say that, there's a lifting. We're in the end times. You've heard me say that before, right? We're in the Aquarian time, right? Where, yes, there's a lot of constriction and fear and stress and whatnot. And at the same time, there's also great connection and evolution of the human as a species, right? And what did I say at the beginning? So I'm going to wrap it up now. What did I say at the beginning? I said around the mystic and how we see it in paradox, how we, where you see one thing. So I just said, okay, there's all this stuff going on, and right, so there's all this stuff that's scary, and there's so much love. There's so much love, and there's so much fear. Right. There's the feminine, and there's the masculine. There's the masculine God, and there's the yes, and there's the no. All right. All right, I'm going to take a breath. What's one thing? Reflect on something that I said. Some of you I know write down a lot, but is there one thing that I've said that you can take away and contemplate? You may not know exactly what it means yet, but it's something that you've gone, that you felt it, or you sensed it, or right? And let me know. And you can, even if you do a writing or a meditation or something on it, let me know. I'm happy to read and know what's going on. You can put in the chat now if you want. Let me just see, there is a couple of things in the chat, I think. There might have been things I already read. Not so much. Fine person. Okay. Yeah. So we talked about a few things, but I actually have my little journal here and I can rattle it off. What is God? What do you believe? Where does it come from? The Shekinah, or the Shlema, sometimes called in Hebrew. Good and evil, the two sides of God. In the beginning, God was created. Pregnant pause. The infinite God generated as an aspect of God. So the word God, you can replace whatever you say. Usually I say the beloved, but this is because it was translation, right? So, so if God is indescribable, rather than trying to describe, what we could do is rule out what it isn't. So there's a comment here: the last few months have been overwhelming for me with taking care of myself. It was good to hear that it could result in my evolution despite the exhaustion. Trust it will bring balance. Yeah. Have you heard? I've done a few teachings on, well, I usually say trauma, but trauma as a gateway. Or trauma as a doorway or an access point. And not necessarily for everybody, because sometimes it's people will just keep spiraling, right? But eventually, right? But we tend to think, so that's a great observation, Jennifer, because we tend to think that if we're not doing okay, whatever that is, that there's something wrong with us, or we're no good, or we're I don't know, put in whatever your self-talk is, right? I know a lot of evolved people that are having such a hard time physically. And in fact, so this must be a mystic ministering, because there's a lot of scripture coming up today. Reminds me of the thorn in the side. Was it Paul or Peter? Paul? Oh, it's getting mixed up. Some Bible guru might tell me. The thorn in the side. I think it was, let me just feel. Paul talked about a thorn in his side, right? But that thorn was his reminder of his humanness, was the reminder of his humility, was the reminder for numerous amounts of things. So, in a way, that thorn, whatever that, it wasn't literally a thorn. The thorn represents the, an ailment, a something, and there's all sorts of guesses at what his thorn was, because they, the story of the road to Damascus. Do you know the story? Where he was actually going to bring down the Christians, right? Well, they weren't Christians yet, Jesus's people, and he got thrown off his donkey and he was blinded, right? He saw God, was blinded. Hello. It's a big charge. Anyway, and some say the thorn was he never got his eyesight back, right? Fully, he could see, but he didn't fully recover his eyesight. Other people have said that he had something wrong with his hand. And so there's many stories, and as we go along, I'll probably look into that more and tell you a whole nother version of it. But it hasn't been my priority looking at that. It's not. I actually don't have much choice. I get shown what I'm to look at. It's so I just go where I'm led. My point being, the thorn in the side was a gift. Was a gift. So I heard a story today. And I didn't pay enough attention to it. I was like scrolling, and it was anyway, it was I think it was a Hindu story. Anyway, it's about a guru, and his student came running to him and said, I'm enlightened, and the guru says, oh, okay, right, well, you can come with me today. And he said, but you can come with me, but so I'm paraphrasing because it's like a longer story. I'm trying to give you the gist of it. But you're not to say a word. So when I go and do my work, you're not to comment on it. Anyway, so I'll just give you two bits of it. I think the first bit, someone was drowning, so he's in a little boat and he was drowning, and the guru didn't save the man, so he drowned. And so the student starts saying, you're supposed to be the guru, you could have saved him, why didn't you, blah blah blah. And he said, you're not to say, you're not to comment. Kept going. Anyway, my computer's going to drop out in a minute, so I'll tell you quick. Gets to the next bit, and there's a man and he's starving, and the guru didn't feed him. And so again, his student says, why didn't you do this? You could have given him food or whatever. Blah, blah, blah. Long story short is the guru ended up saying, you do not know. You cannot see beyond. And the man that drowned, so let me just say that the hungry man, he starved his family and his children, and they all died. And the man was hungry and starving now, right? But he had killed, do you see what I mean? Like, so yeah, we could pull those stories to bits, but the point of it is that he couldn't see past what he could see, whereas his teacher could see a little further and had a bigger story, a bigger perspective, when to act, when not to act. And so when we judge others, you know, it can we just observe, right? You know, and I guess reflect on when you really feel the need to act. Feel if it's coming from your fear or a trigger, because it could be your own trigger. That's you know, your own stuff that you haven't worked out. So I'm talking to all of you. You know, I feel like I'm I'm looking at you, but I'm talking to everybody. And I had that a lot working with traumatized children, because I had a lot of trauma as a kid myself. So when I was working with them, I was seeing myself and I could feel what they would feel. And I knew how sensitive they were and all the rest of it. So I had to be very conscious. And I think that's what helped me with my development. It's being so conscious on every decision that I made. It was not from my emotion, right? When we make a decision from our emotion, that's our, I was going to say weakness, but it's like, that's not our wisdom. Our wisdom's not our emotion. Our emotion is often, you know, our trigger and our fears. And so if we, I'm not saying, you know, we don't, but it's like an indication of, okay, well, why did I do that? Why did I act or say or do or attack that person? Because I had fear, and so I projected it onto the other person. So anyway, what was I trying to say there? Sometimes the thorn in the side, or what you're dealing with, you know, I've got this thing with my arm, and I'm like, you know, it's the most bizarre thing, but of course it is. And I asked this morning about it, and it's got to do with my mother, right? So it's something that, and it's like upper arms left a relationship. So it'd be a female relationship, right? So my mum's mum is transitioning. So my mum's dealing with a lot of that on her own. I can't talk to my mum very often because her phone, like blah, 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 blah. Like there's a lot of stuff going on there. And I just sat and I sort of knew that, but I was like, I'm just gonna talk. I'm just gonna connect. Oh yeah, okay. Doesn't change the fact, but it takes the fear out of what's going on. Why am I, right? And sometimes, so at the moment I could say that's my thorn, but look, I've just used it as a teaching. So maybe it's a blessing. It will help somebody. You know, that's what my brother said with his cancer. He said, if telling his story and talking about it helps somebody, that's why he's here, right? He knows that what he's going through is going to save lives. And it already has, because what I've learned from working with him, I've been doing that in my practice, in my you know, anyway, because having to understand it in a different way showed me new ways of working. And so I let him know that, because I want him to know that that thorn in his side is creating such beauty and healing for other people. You see, it's not about whether he lives or dies. We're all going to die. It's how and what are you going to, how are you going to be remembered? Like, what's your legacy? You know, is he, you know, throwing his money up against the wall, or he, right? He went and cashed everything in and he's given it to his children. He's preparing for his death. What a blessing to be able to prepare for your death. I know that sounds weird, but in some crazy way, it's a blessing to be able to say and write and do and say sorry to everybody, you know, all that, right? So just know, any of you, if not now, in some point, because we're human, we're going to have suffering, physical pain, right? We're going to have physical pain, emotional pain. That's what comes with the territory. It's a blessing. So it's not about just going, oh yeah, and getting on with it. Like it's sort of having that connection to, okay, I've got this experience, and just connecting with it for a little, right? You might still need medication, or to go and, if you've broken your arm or you've got whatever, you might, but it's a language of its own. And that, I guess he was a prophet, right? He never actually met Jesus, but he's supposed to be a prophet. Taught me that, the thorn in the side, right? He had it all his life. What it was, we don't know, but it was his greatest mentor. It was his greatest teacher. So some of you will have something that has been a thorn in your side all your life, whatever that is. And, how you create or make it your gold, right? Mine was how I learn. Right? I was called stupid all my life by everybody. And I was laughed at when I started to do interview series. People laughed at me, right? Because of how I spoke or how I was, and, my my ways, right? And it hurt, but I kept going. And then I realized why people would come to my series was because of how I was. It was different. I would talk to people. I wouldn't interview them. I'd have conversations with them, right? I'd connect. And I didn't know any other way, but I'm so glad that I wasn't trained. Do you see? And just how I see the world. I don't learn easily, but what comes in is profound. It's not something I could learn from a book. So I'm good with how I am now, but I wasn't for a long time. I'll be like, why is it so easy for them? Right? What if I wanted to do that too? Anyway, I found out that I was really clever. I'm really smart. It's just the school system didn't know how to teach me. Some of you are like that too. We call it a sparkly brain. I have a sparkly brain, and it's awesome, and I love it. Right? But it was my thorn most of my life. It was my thorn. And other health problems and whatnot. But I think those early health problems are what opened the gates for me. The struggles in my youth. So let's wrap it up and say, practice calling in, calling on, or even acknowledging, because the Shekinah it means indwelling. Holy wisdom, the indwelling within you. Know it. Bring it in if you choose. And ask her about your thorn. Ask her for guidance. And just sit in the stillness and the silence of that holy wisdom and the breath. So I haven't been doing Circling Grace the last few times, but I guess it is all Circling Grace, right? It's all the energy. I said this the other day because I started doing some higher energy protocols that I haven't done for a while, because I sort of moved away from doing that sort of work. And but I was approached, and you know, and I accepted the work. So it's really interesting how it comes into me now, how I work now. But I was reminded how connected we all are, because that particular type of work, if I don't disconnect well, I feel what they feel. And I had a really rough night. Didn't even occur to me, right? Because when you're doing that work all the time, it's just, but I had a big break. I haven't done that sort of work. You know, the odd one here and there. But particularly if there's any type of mental health, it takes extra work to disconnect. I don't know if any of you know that, right? So there's certain protocols that I have to do for me not to take on, because what I do, I process what's going on for you through my physical body. And if I don't disconnect, it continues. So great for them. Oh, awesome for them. Man, I had some stuff going on. I'm like, what's going on? And I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't disconnect in that particular way. I did the washing and the salt and all that, but there's one particular thing that I learned working with mental health, you know, anything to do with you know, psychological balance stuff, that I must disconnect in that particular way, or I feel what they're going through. And I tell you what, this is how I have empathy, because in the early days I didn't understand this, and my teacher would say, oh, this is how you disconnect, and I'd say, but it doesn't work for me. It didn't work. And so I'd go to bed and I'd feel their soul trying to leave their body, like, you know, all this sort of stuff. And I'd be like, what is going on? And then over time, because they were regular clients, there was two in particular, and I asked one of them, I said, what are your symptoms after, you know, blah, blah, blah. And she told me. And I was like, okay. And I explained a bit, and she's like, yeah, that's it. Because I was literally feeling what she goes through. And that brought me so much empathy for what she's going through. You've got no idea, because it was like, I can't even explain it. I have no words. So I have great compassion for what you know, what other people's thorns are, right? And do my best to support, but I don't want to hold it through the whole night. Anyway, all right, much love. My computer's on red, so I'll be go before it cuts out. And may the blessings be, and know that I hold you, all our community, and you know, I'll be thinking of you. I'm going to try and go out of the house today, and I'll whoosh you off into the water. So I do grace. I do circle of grace in the ocean. It's really powerful. So good. Anyway, all right, much love. So know that we'll do it, but it'll be just in a different way today. So may the blessings be.